congratulate Brother Mumia Abu Jamal on his 66th birthday. And we hope that next year, for his 67th, we'll be celebrating on the outside. So I want to begin by describing a little bit about a momentous action that was taken for Mumia Abu Jamal, the largest demonstration to date to demand freedom for Mumia Abu Jamal. And that was in 1999. I'm a member of the Labor Action Committee to free Mumia Abu Jamal. We were formed in January of '99. And April of that year, which around the time of Mumia's birthday, the mobilization to free Mumia called for a demonstration. And people from around the Bay Area came in for the demonstration. And I'm going to show you a clip about it, but before I do that, you have to understand that one of the basis for agreement of the Labor Action Committee to free Mumia Abu Jamal is we have no confidence that there's justice in this capitalist system. There's not justice in the courts for working people, for people of color, and it's been that way historically. So this action that you'll see took place in 1999. But before that, the Longshore Union in San Francisco, which is composed the majority of African-American and Mexican-American workers, is very sensitive to racism and racial prejudice and oppression. And in 1984, we conducted a strike against the apartheid regime in South Africa. That Nelson Mandela was in prison on Robben Island at the time. When he was freed, he did a world tour, and he came to the Oakland Coliseum with a packed audience of thousands and thousands of people. The first words out of his mouth were to congratulate the Longshore Union for initiating the action against the ship from South Africa by refusing to offload cargo in protest against that government's vicious, racist apartheid policies. And that is the kind of union that the Longshore Union has a proud legacy. I was a member of that union from 1980 up until 2010. And we conducted a number of actions like that. In fact, it was the Longshore Union in San Francisco that was the first union to demand freedom for Angela Davis, who was in prison in 1972. And the Longshore Union in San Francisco began a campaign, or joined a campaign that was already in existence, to free Angela. And so we tried to bring that same slogan to the masses here in San Francisco. In 1999, April of 99, we led, the San Francisco Longshore Union led a march of 25,000 people through the streets of San Francisco to demand freedom for Mumia Abu Jamal. And our slogan in the union is, an injury to one is an injury to all. The chant that we led this momentous march was, an injury to one is an injury to all. Free Mumia Abu Jamal. And so with that, let's go on with the clip here. You'll see what I'm talking about. A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Dock workers say Saturday's a big overtime day to move tons of goods that come through ports. They say nothing was moved on the day shift today. Instead, longshore workers, labor leaders, and social activists made a 2-hour march through San Francisco to protest and try to stop the execution of Mumia Abu Jamal, convicted of killing a Philadelphia police officer 18 years ago.
I think people are recognizing that what we're experiencing really is a crisis in democracy. It's not only about Mumia Abu Jamal, it's about a prison system that is larger and larger, and that focuses on punishment for profit
Dock workers say today's the day to come here instead of going to work. And stop work rallies affect all 22 ports along the West Coast.
Chicano, Native American, we got to do.
Another rally in Philadelphia drew more than 3,000 people, some from as far away as France.
What we want to tell the workers in Pennsylvania is that what the Longshore Union is doing out here in California, they can do in Pennsylvania and save the life of Mumia Abu-Jamal. If the black transit workers in Philadelphia and the bus drivers and the steel workers in Pittsburgh decided that this is an important case, as we have decided, then it's in their power to stop the death machine.
So that gives you an idea of the power of that kind of demonstration that was led by the Longshore Union. And the lesson here is that in capitalist society, the only class that's counterposed to the capitalist class is the working class. But it's got to be organized, and it's got to be organized along a class struggle program. And we have tried to do that in the Longshore Union. Several years after that demonstration for Mumia, on May Day of 2008, we shut down every port on the West Coast to oppose the imperialist wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, demand an end to the war, and removing the troops from those battleground states. So more recently, you may remember that Mumia was inflicted with a deadly disease called hepatitis C. And there was a recently discovered cure for that disease. However, the laboratory that produced it, Gilead Sciences in Redwood City, was charging $1,000 per pill. And for a course of 3 months, which is 90 days, that would be almost $100,000. And who can afford that? That's just a criminal way that capitalism conducts its whole industry of pharmaceuticals. So we know that if Mumia didn't get this medication, he was going to die, as were the other prisoners in Pennsylvania. So we organized a protest here at Redwood City in front of Gilead Laboratories. But more than that, we enlisted the support of dock workers unions around the world to send letters into Governor Tom Wolf of Pennsylvania to demand freedom for Mumia, to demand the medication for him immediately. Those letters came from the Swedish Dock Workers Union, from the Maritime Union of Australia, from the International Dock Workers Council of Barcelona, Spain, the Unite Union, the second largest in Britain. And probably the most important was a powerful letter that was written by the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa. And I just want to read you a line from this powerful letter that they sent. It reads like this. This was from NUMSA, the Metal Workers Union of South Africa, to Governor Wolf. The refusal to health care reminds us of the conditions we were put in under apartheid prisons, where sick detainees were allowed to die in very deplorable, lonely conditions, in solitary, as part of the punishment for their role in the struggle. And shortly after that, the state of Pennsylvania not only provided the life-saving medication Harvoni for Mumia Abu-Jamal, but for 7,000 other prisoners in Pennsylvania who were infected by the same disease. So we have a long record in the Labor Action Committee to free Mumia of organizing campaigns, ultimately and hopefully to free Brother Mumia. And the latest one is a campaign that we're engaged in right now. So let me tell you a little bit about this campaign, and then we'll go into another video, a short video. The pandemic of COVID-19, the coronavirus, is a pandemic. It's worldwide. And the people most vulnerable under capitalism are the poor and the sick, and always the working class, the most oppressed people of color. We have initiated a campaign not only for Mumia, but for other elderly prisoners, prisoners who have a compromised immune system. And let's not forget, Mumia has cirrhosis of the liver. His body is compromised. Should he get that disease, COVID-19, it will almost certainly kill him. And so while we were able, with our action, to get Mumia removed from death row, we were not able to free him from prison altogether. And the Fraternal Order of Police in Pennsylvania have been trying to kill Mumia from the beginning. They framed him. They got him convicted with a racist judge, Sabo, for a death sentence. And we got the death sentence commuted. But if he gets COVID-19, he will die in prison. And we are making demands to release from prison now the elderly, the sick, those who are most vulnerable to getting this disease in a confined area. And one of the confined areas that we have outside of prison are the ICE detention centers, or the ships. So let's go to the video now on the ship, and you'll see what I'm talking about, how the disease is spreading on passenger ships in particular.
Oakland in just a few hours from now. But as KPIX5's Wilson Walker reports, tempers are flaring from crew members still on board.
All we know for sure is that the Grand Princess is supposed to leave the port of Oakland tomorrow. But what about the crew members that are still on board this ship?
You're building a petri dish by quarantining the crew on the ship. This is more than a problem. This is a crisis.
It was a host of Bay Area Maritime Union members this morning speaking on behalf of those we have not seen or heard from, the 1,100 crew members who remain aboard the virus-stricken Grand Princess.
600 Filipinos, there's also Koreans, Sri Lankans, Italians on that vessel.
Cal OES says the crew members who did test positive have been removed, but we know virtually nothing about the remaining crew members that are now stuck on the ship.
The rest of the crew needs to be tested, and they need to be given medical treatment now.
And to be able to repatriate them to their home countries.
Another complaint raised by longshoremen today, ongoing working conditions under the threat of coronavirus. They say workers should be demanding greater safety precautions at all ports on the West Coast.
Go take your equipment and get it clean before you start work. You don't start no shift, you don't do nothing until you get your truck clean. If that's how they're gonna play this game, that's gonna stop work product. They're gonna be upset at that. But that's what we gotta do if they don't wanna do it.
We reached out to Cal OES, which is running this operation. They did not return our calls today. However, a source close to the governor's office tells me that Gavin Newsom wants this ship out of Oakland, even if it means parking it in San Francisco Bay for a time being. As for what happens to the crew, that is still an open question. In Oakland, Wilson Walker, KPIX5.
So that gives you a good indication of the reason why the crew members were so angry. But what the reporting was a little misleading. It said that passengers and some of the crew were taken off to be tested. That part is true. The passengers were disembarked, and some of them were tested. And the crew was also tested. But what happened was the crew was brought back on, even if they tested positive. they were put back on the ship because the company said they were asymptomatic. That is, they didn't show signs of disease. But the CDC, the Center for Prevention and Control of Diseases, said that even if someone is asymptomatic, they can still spread the disease. And so what you have now is what I said in that press conference is a Petri dish. The disease is being incubated because that ship went, after this video, went out to San Francisco Bay. And shortly after they anchored in San Francisco Bay, one of the Filipino crew members died. And as you saw from the video, there were something like 54 different nationalities, but the overwhelming majority of the crew members, 1,100 crew members, were Filipino and Indian, people of color. And right now we have a situation where you have, according to the CDC, 100 vessels, ships off the coast, East Coast, West Coast, and Gulf Coast of the United States, and this government is not allowing them in. And it's not just Trump, it's DeSantis in Florida, it's Governor Newsom here in California. Same thing, they won't let these ships dock, and they won't therefore treat the seafarers that are infected with the disease, or they won't even test the others. So we have a situation where this deadly disease is spreading not only in the prisons, but on the ships and in ICE jails. So there are a lot of people that are going to get sick from this, and many will die. And so what the Labor Action Committee to free Mumia Abu-Jamal has called for is an action at San Quentin. San Quentin is still where capital punishment is administered, although Governor Newsom says he's opposed to that. It is possible that people who have been framed and convicted and are still on death row, like Kevin Cooper, who's in San Quentin, could die from the COVID-19 virus while Governor Newsom is standing on the podium talking about how he's opposed to state executions. He will have blood on his hands if people like Kevin Cooper and others who are innocent die in prison. So the Labor Action Committee is calling for a demonstration, a caravan and social distancing protest in front of San Quentin on May 9th at 11 in the morning. That's a Saturday. If you want further information on this, please contact me. You can email me at Jack Heyman, that's Jack, H-E-Y-M-A-N, Heyman, at Comcast.net. And we look forward to your participation. And we want, our main demand is to stop state executions by COVID-19, free all the old, sick, and vulnerable prisoners now. Thank you very much.